All right. This is the no internet version of the recordings now, so I have no idea when any of you will see this, but what can you do? So here we go. This is Joe's team. He had the 7th overall pick, so not a great place to be picking, and I don't like this draft, Joe. I think this is probably your worst draft you've had, so let's get into it. So first round, you took Antonio Brown. Now, you had Antonio Brown last year. I think maybe you have preference for him. You probably saw him as the best player on the board. I can get on board with that. But the dirty little secret that was circulating the draft room, at least for most of us, everyone I talked to, is I don't think a single person had Antonio Brown going in the top 10. Not that he's not a top 10 player in fantasy, but I don't think anyone's going to take him that high, to be frank. I wasn't going to take him if he fell to me. I know Sarah wasn't going to take him. I know no one in the top 5 was going to take him. I'm not sure about Justin, but I don't think Justin was going to take him either. So really, it was either going to be you or he was going to fall to at least Charlie. Maybe even further. He might have fallen to Brian, possibly. Because, I mean, he is really good to have. He's a number 1 receiver, obviously. You had him on your team. You know how good he is. You were the number 1 seed last year, and he was the best player on your team. So I can understand why you took him, but the issue is, he's been the best fantasy receiver for 4 years. But if you're taking him, and you take him in, say, the top 10 picks, that means probably in the second round you're going to have to reach for a running back, and it's not going to be that great because most of the other good receivers, like if you told me I can get DeAndre Hopkins and Odell Beckham instead of Antonio Brown and whomever, I'm probably going to take those 2 guys. If you told me I can get Julio Jones and Christian McCaffrey over Antonio Brown and whomever, I'm probably going to take that. If you told me I can get Dalvin Cook and Michael Thomas. The point is, first 2 rounds, no one really wanted to take Antonio Brown that high, and it's not because he's not good. He's really good. He's been the number 1 fantasy receiver for 4 straight years. But teams don't win championships behind Antonio Brown because the amount of draft capital you have to use to get him means that you don't have a good starting running back, which you really need. And we're really going to get into now because you didn't. That's the biggest issue I have with your team. So second round, took AJ Green. I believe you've had AJ Green before. I think you had him, if I want to say, 2 years ago. I don't have any internet, so I can't really look things up or go through everything. I have my notes, but even my notes, anyway. So you've had AJ Green before. You have him again on your team now. So AJ Green's a solid player. I had AJ Green on my team last year. My team went to the finals. You would say, oh, man, that's a pretty good player. But AJ's coming on a little bit of a hard time. So he still sees a healthy percentage of his team's basically target share, which means the amount of targets that plays are called for that guy or the ball's thrown his way. He sees about a quarter, so 25%. That's really healthy, really good. I think only Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, and Antonio Brown have higher target shares than him the last 3 years. So he's elite volume first, number 1. Number 2, he's only 30 years old, so he's still in the heart of his prime, and he's a big play receiver. But I had him on my team last year, so I know him inside and out, and I took him last year, and I thought he was going to be great, and he kind of let me down. He only had 3 games greater than 85 yards. Now, some of those games, I think he had, if I want to say, I wrote this down. He only had 8 touchdowns. I think it was 8, but he didn't have any in the playoffs for me, and he was actually a liability for me in the playoffs. He didn't have a single game over 85 yards or a touchdown in the playoffs for the last 3 weeks. He was the 10th fantasy receiver in our league last year. So he's a good player. He's a borderline great player. He has just as much talent as DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham, Antonio Brown. The issue you have is, Andy Dalton is not a good quarterback. Those other guys, Like Eli Manning is on the decline. He's won 2 Super Bowls. Ben Roethlisberger's won 2 Super Bowls. Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins has Deshaun Watson, who looked like the rookie of the year last year before he got hurt. AJ Green has Andy Dalton. I mean, Andy Dalton's been to a Pro Bowl before, but he does not look good lately. He is just not looking great. So if you told me AJ Green got say, I don't know, 100 catches. 100 catches of those guys, you get 1,200 yards. 100 catches for AJ Green, and that Bengals offense is 900 yards. It's a big difference because even though they throw him the ball enough, he's the only real offensive threat on that team, even with Joe Mixon, who I kind of like at running back. He's really talented, but the O-line's not good. The quarterback's not good. The other receivers aren't good. It's just... So I don't like this pick per se because, I think you took AJ thinking he was the best guy on the board, and I don't really think, playing draft capital-wise, I think AJ's on the decline because of the offense he's in, because of the team he's on, because of how poorly they use him, because of a multitude of reasons. So I think he's on the decline, and he used a second-round pick on him. It just, that's not what I'd be looking for, and he's not going to be... I hope he's a top 10 receiver kind of thing. Last year he was number 10 in fantasy. You hope for that, but I don't know if he will be, and that's the scary thing with him. And the other thing with him that makes it kind of scary for you is, again, you're ignoring the running back position. So first 2 rounds, we've gone double wide receiver. And the only other team that went double wide receiver is Ryan. And Ryan's receivers are Odell Beckham Jr. and DeAndre Hopkins, who are probably the number 2 and number 3 receivers in fantasy. You have the number 1 receiver in fantasy, but now you've dropped all the way down to the number 10 receiver in fantasy. So that's a big drop-off. And we still need a running back. So 3rd round, you go and get a running back. So kudos to you. You got Jay Ajayi. Now, out of the gate, Jai was with Miami, and they were talking in the preseason. This is why I don't like coach speak. It's he's going to get 20, 25 carries a game. He's going to be really good. He's going to be our bell cow workhorse running back. Yeah, that didn't happen, at all. He had, I think he missed the first game because he was hurt. Second game, they gave him the ball a lot. He was pretty good with the ball. And then they stopped. And I don't know why. And he was pretty effective, and they were just trying to throw the ball with Jay Cutler, and you really couldn't explain to me why that's a good idea, but whatever. So he was there for 7 games with the Dolphins. Actually, he was taken in the first round in our league last year. It was not a good pick. So he's in the first 7 weeks with the Dolphins, but he gets traded to the Eagles, and now they start, they use him, but not as much as, you'd like to see him used. He scored only 1 touchdown on the entire season last year. The Eagles were giving him the ball maybe 15 times a game, and, he's getting a healthy amount of, yards per carry. I think it was 5.8 yards per carry. That's a pretty good amount of yards per carry. That's really good. But he needs touchdowns, all right? He needs to score in the goal line. And, LeGarrette Blount's gone. Okay. So that's one guy gone. Donnell Pumphrey's gone. Okay. We're starting to clear out the backfield a little bit, but, they've brought Darren Sproles is back. Corey Clement's back. Now, again, coach speak is, the Eagles are going to use Ajayi. He's going to be the workhorse bell cow back, just like literally what Miami said last year. And the reason why he was traded mid-season is because everyone's kind of scared of his knee because he has, basically no, cartilage left in, his left knee, which is why he dropped it in the draft, and now he got traded for only a 4th-round pick. But he's a really talented player. I don't know, maybe, the cartilage isn't any good, but he's looked pretty good. He's been hurting with the foot injury, but he's going to play tomorrow night. Ajayi has upside in the sense that he could be a guy who, in a good offense that believed in him, would run for 1,200 yards and 13 touchdowns. He has more talent than, say, Melvin Gordon. But the problem is, I don't think there's a lot of mouths to feed on the Eagles. Alshon Jeffrey's hurt. Okay, fine. But, they still got Mike Wallace and Zach Ertz. Trey Burton's gone, but they brought in Dallas Gobert. They spent a second-round pick on a tight end. You still got Corey Clement. You've brought back Darren Sproles. The hope is Ajayi's the goal line back. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but, there's some upside. There's a little upside there, especially now he's on a better team that hopefully will use him. So I could see him as an RB2. You have him as your RB1. You have elite receivers. So, maybe that could work out. This isn't bad. He's probably top 15 running back, and that's workable. So, not a terrible third-round pick. You need to take a running back, and to your credit, you took probably the best one on the board, so I'll give you that. But now this is really where the draft goes off the rails. So, fourth round. I say it every year. Stop wasting picks on quarterbacks. Stop wasting picks on quarterbacks. Don't waste picks on quarterbacks. Don't waste high picks on quarterbacks. Just don't do it. And you did it. You were the first first team to take a quarterback high. You took Aaron Rodgers, so at least to your credit, you took the best quarterback in fantasy, supposedly. He was the 29th rated quarterback last year because he missed over half the season. So, you took a guy who's now 31 years old and had a broken collarbone and missed over half the year last year to be the number one quarterback in fantasy. Okay, sure. Is he really good? Yeah, I'd say so. Is he possibly, if he stays healthy the whole season, a top 5 quarterback in fantasy? Yeah, I can agree with that. He probably averaged 19 points a game, so that'd be top 5, top 10 quarterback. Okay, yeah. But, again, the issue I have is, you're paying for the sticker price. It's kind of like this. Is Aaron Rodgers the best player on the board in the fourth round for you? I would agree that he was probably the best player on the board. Yeah, okay. So why does that make it a bad pick then? Well, here's the answer. The answer is, he was the best player on the board, but you need to realize that you have to address needs on your team. You can't just, every round, I'll give you an example. So Andre, most of the time does draft the best player on the board. He looks at the best players, and he tries to draft them on the board. But Andre also isn't, he also knows how the draft goes. If I am deficient at running back, he knows, you know what, sometimes I have to reach for need. I have to fill that hole. And he also knows that, quarterback, there's a lot of good quarterbacks. I could probably wait on one. There's a good quarterback who's the top-rated quarterback in this round, but you know what the difference between him and, say, this other quarterback I could get 4 rounds later? It's maybe half a point, at best. So that's really the issue I have. You're paying for the sticker price on Aaron Rodgers. You're it's kind of like buying a Corvette and for, say, $75,000, and you could have a souped-up, really good Mustang for $50K, and it'd be just as good. Maybe you really like that Corvette, and you want that Corvette, and that's your baby, and you love it. Okay, but is it worth paying $75,000 to $50,000? No, it's not. That's a lot of money. You just spend another $25,000. And while you might say, oh, well, I have the money to use that on, not in this scenario. You have draft capital, and that draft capital is slowly slipping away, and you're using a lot of it on a quarterback who missed over half the season last year, and you hope doesn't get hurt again. If he gets hurt again, you cut him and you pick up someone like Jared Goff, who was, guess what, a top 12 quarterback in fantasy football, and you can have him literally for free. But you used a 4th-round pick on a guy who you hope is healthy, and that's just it's a waste. You shouldn't waste picks on quarterbacks this high. I understand that Rodgers is really good. I understand that you think he's really good. I understand he could be the number 1 fantasy quarterback. But draft capital-wise, it wasn't a good pick. Drew Brees, I took in the 11th round, was my number 1 rated player on my board from literally, I want to say, round 6 on. And I didn't touch him. And the reason was very simple, because I figured I didn't want to use the draft capital on him. I mean, I like Drew Brees. He was good for you last year, but you took Drew Brees in like the 5th round last year, and he became like the 9th best quarterback. I took Deshaun Watson, all free agency for free, and he only played 7 games, and he was the 17th best quarterback. And those 7 games, he was the number 1 fantasy quarterback. Like, that just gives you an example, like, you can find quarterbacks for free, for nothing. That'll turn into something. But using high draft capital on a quarterback you hope is good it just doesn't. The difference between Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees is not worth drafting Aaron Rodgers 7 rounds before him. It's just not. So, is he worth the pick? He was the best player on the board at the time, but preferable to his position, no, he was not worth the 4th round pick. So now we're getting into it. So again, 5th round, you're taking the best player on the board. You're ignoring positional need. Again, no second running back. So we already have 2 receivers. Let's go get a 3rd. So now you're filling your flex, and you went for Emmanuel Sanders. Now, Emmanuel Sanders was okay last year, not great. He was never really healthy, and he didn't have a quarterback most of the year. They were starting like Trevor Siemian in Denver, and Trevor Siemian's not a good quarterback. So, the hope is they got Case Keenum, and he can be good. He had a very good year last year for Minnesota. I don't know if that's the true him or because he's been a journeyman quarterback, but he's better than Trevor Siemian. He has a history. So could I see with like Emmanuel Sanders getting, say, 70 yards a game and possibly scoring like 5 touchdowns? Yeah, I could see that. That would make him a flex-worthy wide receiver on a team. So, I mean, that's something, I suppose. But last year he was like the 62nd best wide receiver. Didn't even break the top 50 because he was injured so much. I don't think he scored a touchdown the whole season either. And that offense likes to run the ball a lot. So, like, they were 8th most rushing attempts in the NFL last year, and they didn't have good running backs or a good quarterback. So, I think he's a good flex, but again, like, you need a running back. You don't have a second running back. You're reaching for a guy who's good. He can be a good flex. But I don't know if that's the reach is good. And then, again, like we're going to go through it next round. So, again, ignoring running back. Going for Greg Olsen. Now, Olsen, another, like, I don't know what it is, but you took, like, some injury risks. Like, Rodgers missed over half the year. Emmanuel Sanders wasn't healthy for over half the year. Like, Greg Olsen missed half the year last year. Over half the year. I think Greg Olsen is the number 1 tight end on Carolina. I would agree with that. I think he's the best offensive pass catcher on Carolina. I'd agree with that too. I think Greg Olsen can average about, say, 70 yards a game, score 7 touchdowns on the season. That would make him a number 1 tight end. That would make him top 3 at his position. Yeah, I agree with that. Is that more valuable than getting a good number 2 running back? No, it's not. Greg Olsen's good. Again, the hope is he stays healthy, because if he doesn't, then the pick goes bust. But okay, we took a tight end and a flex wide receiver over running backs. All right, so now we really have to draft for need. We really need a running back now. And you finally took one, and by this point, we're in what? We're in round 7? Yeah, we're in the 7th round now. You really need a running back to be a starter on your team, and there's not a whole lot left. I'll give you an example. By this time, I had taken 4 running backs before you took your second running back. All right? I loaded up on running backs before you took your second running back. And the guy you took is a backup. You took Tariq Cohen. So does Tariq Cohen have some upside? Yeah, he does. Tariq Cohen last year was a good player. He was 42nd as running back. He doesn't rush the ball a whole lot. He's more of a 3rd round shifty guy, very quick, very small, very nimble. He didn't score a whole lot of touchdowns. I think he scored 2 on the year. He had about, say, like 40 yards a game, which doesn't sound great, but that's something. So what do I think of Cohen? What do I think he's going to do this year? So Cohen's the backup on Chicago. That's to his detriment. To his benefit, they have a new coach, Matt Nagy. I've talked about their new O coordinator, Mark Helfrich. He's the O coordinator, came over from Oregon. I like him a lot. That's why I picked Trey Burton as my tight end. Mark Helfrich was in that Oregon offense, Marcus Mariota under Chip Kelly. Anyway, they're opening up the offense, and they're talking about using Cohen very creatively, using him in the slot, using him out of the backfield on wheel routes, using him as a good option, because he and Jordan Howard are their two best offensive players, and they're both in the backfield. So they got to do something with him. So do I think they'll creatively use Cohen as kind of like an option, kind of like a poor man's Tyreek Hill? I could see that. Is he a number 2 running back on a starting team in fantasy? No. I mean, think about this. There are 32 teams in the NFL. There are 14 teams in our fantasy league. Your number 2 starting running back is a backup running back on a real-life NFL team. There are 32 of those, and you got a backup. There are only 14 fantasy teams in our league, and he's a starter. Like, you have him higher on the depth chart than the actual team the NFL does. So, yeah, I don't love that. I don't think he's a starter. I think you'll be lucky to get 6 points a game out of him, because some games he'll have a big difference and he'll score a touchdown and he'll be good. You'll get like 10, 12 points, and that's pretty good for a running back. But there's going to be other games where he might not even break 20 yards. So it's going to be pretty brutal, those games. Because if you're even getting like 2 points out of your second running back slot, that's really terrible. That is borderline costing you games against other teams, kind of anchor. So this is why you need to take a number 2 running back, because even if you were reaching for someone, at least they would be a starter on a team, and you could say reasonably well they'd get 50 yards a game. We're really in dangerous territory of not having running back depth. And you've done, the rest of this draft, you doubled down on this. I almost want to call this it's not RB0. RB0 is basically where you go the first 5-6 rounds, you don't draft any running backs. You didn't do that, but it's RB1. You took one running back who I think is a starter on a good team. He would be the second best running back, I would hope, my number 2 running back on a starting team, and you have him as number 1. It's a little bit of a reach, but but that was the only one you took, and that's really the biggest issue. So now we're going to really get into it. So next round, you took Cooper Kupp. I like Cooper Kupp. I have him as a sleeper pick. He gets a lot of red zone shares. He's a good wide receiver. He's a slot wide receiver in the Rams offense. He's a good player. He does see the ball quite a bit in the red zone. He was their number 1 red zone target on the highest scoring offense in football last year. It's a really cool, neat little stat I just brought, didn't I? They had the highest usage in 3 wide receiver sets, so he does see the field about 65-70% of their offensive plays. There's a lot of people to feed in that offense, though. There is Todd Gurley. There's now Brandon Cooks. There is Robert Woods. Do I think Cooper Kupp could be a top 25 receiver again? Yeah, I would say so, and that would make him a flex wide receiver. But you already took a flex wide receiver, so now we're just doubling up on another flex wide receiver. He does have upside. I think he can be a good player. I think he can average 7.5, 8 points a game. It's good. That's good for a flex, but we have one of those. Where's the depth at running back? I need depth at running back. So then, next pick, still ignoring the depth. Now we take Kelvin Benjamin. Okay, Kelvin Benjamin. He's the number 1 receiver for Buffalo Bills. Their quarterback's terrible. I don't like him. It's Nathan Peterman. And Benjamin's big. He's tall. They traded for him midseason from Carolina. They got him because he's tall, and they hope he can be a red zone threat. And, the former coach for the former defense coordinator at Carolina is the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. And, the hope is that they'll be able to utilize him, but I mean, I don't I don't love that offense at all. I think they're going to run the ball a lot with McCoy, but he's the number one receiver on that team. So I guess I could see like a 7-point, 8-point a game receiver receiving core out of him. Like last year, he only averaged like 5 points a game, but he was traded at midseason, learning the offensive playbook, and he was injured. So like maybe he averages like 5.5, 6 points a game. Maybe he scores like 4 touchdowns on the season. He gets like 700, 800 yards, just because someone has to on the team. So that would make him borderline low-end flex, but like still, we're taking another receiver who's kind of a low-end flex, who kind of has like, this is his floor, and his ceiling's like just a little bit above it. It's not exactly, there's no real like huge potential for anything more, and we're ignoring the most important position at fantasy football. So I mean, this is gonna get brutal. Like we're taking okay, so we take Khalil Mack next round. Mack's back. He's like a top 5 defensive lineman in football. He just got paid. He's gonna go to Chicago. He's gonna start week 1. He's really good, really good player. He's the first player ever to be an All-Pro at 2 different positions. He won Defensive Player of the Year 2 years ago. He's a double-digit defensive lineman. He averages like 10 points a game. He'll get sacks. He'll get fumble recoveries, rushes. Good player. Very, very good player. He's top 5 of his position. You can't do better than that. You got Kevin Byard as your safety. So like Byard was the number 1 All-Pro safety last year. He led the league in interceptions. I don't think that's going to happen again because like that's really hard to repeat getting a lot of interceptions. But I mean, he was the number 1 All-Pro safety last year. So like, if that's the peak, the downside or the decline isn't that bad, really. I don't think he'll be a top 5 safety, but he could be top 10. I could see that. So I think this was a reach, but he's a good player. I mean, this is where like I don't understand. Like we took Matt Ryan now, and we're getting into, gosh, it's a 12th round. We still don't have a third running back. Don't have a backup running back anywhere. Like we have 2 running backs, and we're taking a backup quarterback over another running. Like okay, sure. Do you know anything about Matt Ryan? Did you know like he was 15th best fantasy quarterback in our league last year? You know what that would be? That would not be a starter. There's only 14 teams in our league. You want a top 14 quarterback to start for you. So he's not a starter on a fantasy team. So I guess you took him to be your backup quarterback in case Rodgers gets hurt. But like, I could pick up Jared Goff right now, today, at 3 o'clock on Wednesday, September 5th, the day before the first game, for free, on free agency right now. And I could get him for free. I didn't waste a draft pick on him. And you used a pick on a second quarterback without taking, like, you need to draft for need at some point. You need another running back. So do I think Matt Ryan has potential to be the MVP he was 2 years ago? I mean, possibly. I don't love the offense he's in now with offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian, who I don't like. He runs like this weird, like, set I-form kind of like veer offense. It's weird. He misses Shanahan, who was his O coordinator when they went to the Super Bowl, and now is the head coach at San Francisco. But I mean, he's a mid-tier like backup quarterback. I don't know why you wasted a pick on a backup quarterback when you can get them for free on free agency like today, right now. But okay, sure. Still not taking a running back. Round 13, taking another linebacker, Eric Kendricks. All right, so Kendricks is good. He was a top 20 linebacker last year. He's on the number 1 defense in Minnesota. I think he can probably do that again. So top 20, top 25 linebacker. That's good. But like again, like, I can get linebackers for days. Like, there are at least 3 starting linebackers on literally every team in the NFL. Some teams run a 3-4, so that means there's 4 linebackers, 3 defensive linemen. And then other teams run a 4-3, which means there's 4 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers. So there's literally, like, starting linebackers for days. Like, days and days and days and days. And you're taking linebackers over a running back that you would need. You need another running back. Like, if you expect Jay Ajayi and Tariq Cohen to make the entire season healthy, like, you still need another running back. Like, I don't understand. Like, Cohen is a backup running back, and he's your starter. Like, he's a backup running back on an actual NFL team, and he's starting for you. Like, that's not good. But you didn't, like, try and take any upside or anything. You're just taking best player on the board, best player on the board, best player on the board. You're not taking a running back, and I don't know why. Like, you should know when you see, oh, hey, there's a run on this, like, spot. Am I solid at that spot? If I'm solid at the spot, then yeah, okay. There's a run. Maybe they're not worth the pick at that value that I have to use. Okay, I can get on board with that. But, like, at some point, you have to be like, I need to get this. I need depth. There's no depth. So, man. 14th round, we finally take another running back. And it's been a long time, okay? It's been 7 picks since our last running back pick. And this is our first backup running back. And it will be the only backup running back we take in this draft. And it's Jeremy Hill. Do you know anything about Jeremy Hill? Well, let me tell you some things about Jeremy Hill. So Jeremy Hill got cut by the Bengals. Bengals aren't a very good team. But, you know, okay, sure. He gets picked up by the Patriots. That's a good team. Okay, I'm on board with that. Actually, in the last video, I wasn't able to think of who was the other running back on the Patriots team that was going to soak up carries other than, you know, Sonny Michel or James White. And now I remember who it was. It was this guy, Jeremy Hill, who's the 4th string running back on the Patriots, okay? I have no idea what his role is. I haven't the slightest idea. Do you know why that is? Because he's the 4th string running back on a team. Like, I don't know what they're going to use him for. He's not the starter. He's not even the backup. Like, so James White is the 3rd down, like, receiving back out of the backfield. Sonny Michel is the 1st round pick they used, and they used him for basically, I don't know, in between the 20s rushing. Rex Burkhead, there's who the other running back is. He's on Mac's team. That's why I didn't like Mac's draft. So Rex Burkhead's the goal line back. Okay, so I have a goal line back. I have a guy who runs for big yards in between the 20s, and I have a receiving back. Well, that's 3 very specific roles for 3 other people I just named ahead of this guy. I don't know what they're using Jeremy Hill for. I'm surprised he made the team, quite honestly with you, because I don't know what he's going to do. If he becomes the goal line guy instead of Burkhead, that's good. Okay. That's valuable. LeGarrette Blount was a top 15 running back 2 years ago because he led the league in touchdowns because he was the goal line back for the Patriots. I mean, that's a very valuable role to have. But I don't know if he gets that. And he's the 4th stringer on the team right now. And he's your backup running back. Like, you literally have him as your 3rd string running back, and a team in the NFL right now today has him as a 4th string running back. That's bad. That's really, really bad. Like, there are 32 teams in the NFL, and you took a 4th string running back as your 3rd string running back. Like, what are we doing here? Like, you need to take more running backs. Like, we're gonna go through some history right now. So I made some notes. I don't even have the internet up because my internet's out. So I'm gonna see if I can find what I wrote down from last year. But it was actually something very specific because I remembered, like, why your team tanked and why you were the number 1 seed, and then all of a sudden everything kind of went a little bit haywire. And I think I remember why. So let's see if I can pull it up. Okay, there we go. All right, so here's why your team blew up and you didn't do very well in the playoffs. Again, so you had 3 running backs, just like you do today, and you had the best possible outcome you could hope for with those 3 running backs. You had Lamar Miller, who was healthy, and he was a top 10 running back for most of the season, and then Deontay Foreman got hurt, and he ended up being the 14th best running back in fantasy. Good on you. You got Bilal Powell, who was a top 25 running back at the end of the year, and you took him as your 3rd running back. So that means your 2nd running back was Chris Thompson. Chris Thompson was your bell cow. Chris Thompson was the 10th best running back on your team in fantasy football. He was terrific for you. He was the number 1 starting running back for you, and on the rest of your team, he was the star player. He was the guy who possibly gave you a shot at winning the playoffs. You know what happened to Chris Thompson? In Week 10, he broke his leg. And then you didn't replace him. You put in Bilal Powell for the rest of the season, and your team basically went, after starting out really hot, you went like 7-2 the first 9 weeks. You went 2-2 to finish the season, and then you lost in the first round. And I can point to exactly why that happened. Because Chris Thompson got hurt, and you had no way of replacing him. And you did the exact same thing this year. Like, literally the exact same thing. You took 3 running backs, and you're hoping and praying that they're good. And I'm here to tell you, I don't want you to just hope and pray. Like, God doesn't want you to just hope and pray. You got to lay the foundation for him to help you, okay? This is not... You got a 4th-string running back as your 3rd-string running back. That's bad. It's not good. It's really bad. All right, so we took Tyler Eifert. He has upside. If he stays healthy, he's a tight end. He could possibly, score some touchdowns if he stay healthy, but he doesn't stay healthy. But, we'll see. I mean, I like the upside. Maybe he led tight ends in touchdowns 3 years ago. So maybe, he finds that again. But he's got to stay healthy the whole season. He hasn't done it in 2 years. We took Danny Trevathan. He's a good linebacker. So we need another linebacker. He was top. Actually, he missed like a few games last year because he got hurt, and he was still like a top 40 linebacker. So if he stays healthy the whole season, hopefully he's a top 25 linebacker. Solid player. We took Robbie Gould, who's the kicker on San Francisco. He was pretty good. Makes his kicks, solid guy. He was top 5 at his position last year. Hopefully he does it again. I don't know if he will because the offense will be better and they won't kick as many field goals. But, we'll see. And then you took Myles Garrett because you hope, if Mac was hurt or something or he missed these games, you could start Garrett. And he was the number 1 overall pick 2 years ago for the Browns, and he's got a lot of potential, and he could be a top 5 defensive lineman. But, just getting back to this, like, you have no running backs. You have a running back in Jay Ajayi, who's probably a starting number 2 running back on any team, and he's your number 1. So that's a little bit of a reach, but okay, maybe you need. You have a backup running back as your starting running back in Tariq Cohen. I like Cohen as like a bench piece, possibly my flex for 2 or 3 weeks, not as a starter like ever on a team as my starting 2 running back. But I guess you need go for need. And then you have Jeremy Hill, who you took in the 13th round. Yeah, like a 14th round to be your backup running back, and he's a 4th stringer on his own team? What are we doing? Why? Like, there were so many running backs at any time you could have taken. Like, we can just ignore the first 3 rounds. We'll just go with we want Brown, Green, and Ajayi. Fine. Sure. Okay. So we could have taken Chris Carson. We could have taken Deion Lewis. We could take Carlos Hyde instead of Aaron Rodgers. We could take Rex Burkhead, like Kerryon Johnson, like Mark Ingram. Like, these are guys. And, are these guys great? No, I would say, yeah, okay, maybe those guys aren't great. But you know what they are? They're starting running backs in the NFL. Like, you could have maybe taken Jamal Williams. You could have taken Rashad Penny. Maybe there was Adrian Peterson was somewhere in there. Peyton Barber, who I took, and now is starting at flex for me. Like Jordan Wilkins, Jose took, and he's starting for the Colts right now. Chris Thompson, who you had last year. I don't know what you were like. I guess you were going by, I'm just going to take the best player every single round kind of thing. But you have to be like, this is why I give you a sheet of paper and it says, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and then your bench. You have to be aware on your bench, like, what you need. Like, if you're wasting picks on your bench for backup tight ends and backup defensive linemen and backup linebackers or safeties or whatever, like, those are wastes because you need depth at running back. Running back, there's a high number of attrition. They get hurt all the time, but they have the most potential to win you games. And here we are with 3 running backs, and they have not great potential, and I don't think any of them would be a number 1 running back on any team in our league. So where does that leave you? Well, you have probably the 2nd best wide receiving core in our league after Ryan, so that's something. You have possibly the number 1 quarterback in our league in Aaron Rodgers, so good on you. You have maybe a top 3 tight end in Greg Olsen. Okay. Those are all good things. You need, like, the other issue I have is, like, you don't take care of your team like I don't even know if you're going to watch this video. Like, last year in our league, you spent 0 free agent auction dollars. You made 8 transactions on the entire season. And you only made like 7 of them when someone got hurt or you needed a backup. So really, you only made 1 transaction when you actually wanted something. So, are you actually going to put in the work to possibly make this team better? Like, look for a trade and use some of that extra wide receiver depth to find a running back to possibly be your number 2 running back? I don't think you are. I mean, nothing about last year or the previous season tells me you are. And that's really, like, the biggest issue I have. I feel as though, like, we have a lot of teams in our league now. Our league's very competitive. We have a lot of people who really care and they're really trying. And I don't feel like you really, I don't know if maybe you enjoy the thrill of it and seeing all of us, and I don't know, maybe you do, and that's cool. But like, you gotta do something, man. You gotta work at this, all right? You gotta try. You gotta try to be better. Like, will you make the playoffs? I mean, you usually make the playoffs, but that's usually because you have a really good draft and things break right for you, and that's cool. And you know, it might happen again, but like, you're not winning a championship like this. You're just not. Like, you don't have the horses for it. And I don't know if you're going to put in the work to find the horses for it. I wish you did. Like, if I had your draft the last 5 years, like, I drafted exactly like you. I got your exact players. And I worked at it. I probably would have won not just 1, but maybe 2 or 3 championships. That's how good you have been at drafting. You've been insanely good at it. This is your worst draft. And the reason is because it's incredibly obvious that you are very, very deficient at one position that is really, really important. It's a huge, giant, gaping hole that will literally could cost you like games and might cost you your season. And if this was like another team like Mac or Brian or possibly Justin, like I could pick almost like any other team in the league, then I would say just like, you know what, maybe this person will really put in the time to like figure this out and put it together and like get the most they can out of this team. But I don't know if you will. I mean, I don't know if you will. I hope you do. I think you should. I think you'd be really good and you get a lot out of fantasy football if you really just put in the time. But I don't know if you will. And that's really the biggest issue I have with this team. Not only do I not believe in this team because you don't have the depth, but I don't think you're going to take the time to really like try and fix this team up. Like, the saying in our league is like when you draft a player for that season, the player goes to die because we never see that player for the rest of the season. Like, it just like we'll send out trade requests and you won't answer them. Like, it just happens. That's the saying as it goes, and it's just really frustrating sometimes. And that's okay. That's you run your team how you want to run your team. I respect the hell out of you because you win, and that's really the bottom line. But you need to at least work on it a little bit. Just, you know, here or there. You don't have to work a lot on it. You don't even have to do it every week if you don't want to. But you just have this one gaping hole. If you fill it, you could have a really good team. But I don't know if you'll actually take the time to do that. So for that reason alone, I'm giving you a D, which is the lowest grade I've given so far. Just because it's just not, it's a really huge, it's going to be difficult for you to find an adequate starting running back to play. That's going to be really difficult. Like, there are going to be injuries throughout the year, and you might be able to use your free agent dollars on free agency to get a good running back, but I don't know if you will. I have no idea if you will. And that's really like why I'm just like, is this hole going to be here the whole season? Because if it is, like, this is not good. This is really bad. So that's why you're getting a D. I'm sorry. I think your team has a lot of potential. I think your team has more potential than some of the other teams, but you have a gaping hole, and I don't know if you're actually going to take the time to fill it. So, I mean, we'll see, but that's why you're getting a D, because that's a huge, gaping, giant chasm of just, you need to fill that. So, sorry, Joe. Maybe you'll hate me for this video, but these are just my thoughts.